All right, so it's 2:30, so I have to start because this is a lot of info. So my name is Dr. Jonathan Cresci. I am the owner and operator of Fundamental Sounds, which is a record label and a audio production and education company, okay? I used to be a professor at Frederick Community College, but then my wife got a job in Little Rock, Arkansas, and so I followed my wife. So now I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas, being a record producer. And, but I love education, and that's why I'm here. And I have a couple more panels. I have 3 more panels. There's a voiceover panel, which is completely applicable to vocals, if that's what you'd like, which will happen tonight at 8:30. And I will be pulling people from the audience to do stuff, because it's going to be a live demo. So live demos are scary. It's going to be cool. And then we have a compression lecture tomorrow. So it's doing the practical side of compression. I know there was a compression lecture last year, and some people had come and asked me to, it was more of a physics lecture than it was a practical lecture. So they asked me to do some practical stuff. And then there's going to be a mastering lecture right after it, where we talk about mastering audio, not only for music, but for video games and everything, because with the plethora of different streaming and media that we're putting our music and sounds in, mastering has become much more, let's say, complicated. It's a little less straightforward than it used to be. So that's what we have coming up. But Ambisonics. So 3D audio, Ambisonics, 360 audio, it all sort of means the same thing. And what is Ambisonics? What's funny about this is people have been craving, I hate using the term 3D audio, but I will use the term 3D audio, that they've been craving this kind of audio forever. So Ambisonics were actually developed in the 60s. Okay, and it was an offshoot of what was called quadraphonic sound, which was 4 microphones being fed to 4 speakers, and it gave you a more immersive sort of feel, right? It's kind of like old school surround sound. And there were a couple people in Britain, a lot of different people. I don't want to like point out one in particular, but they had Cambridge had they called it a tape recording club. And a lot of famous recording engineers came out of that tape recording club, like Tony Faulkner, who I believe has passed away, but he was sort of one of the pioneers of one of these things, and they would experiment with it. And what they did was they took microphones and they got them really, really close together in a very, very specific angles and distances, and then they were able to matrix it together and use math and equations to physically turn it into something that when you put headphones on, it felt like you had surround sound. And that was sort of the beginning of what is Ambisonics. So what's the difference between Ambisonics and surround sound, right? Surround sound is a horizontal thing, right? It's all about what's around you. Ambisonics also capture what is above you and below you. So it now is giving you fully immersive. So that's why we get that feel, that whole VR thought, right? Because you can now track sounds. You can move your head and up and down, and things will change as you move them, as you move your head. Whereas in surround sound, you have point sources around you, and it does create an immersive experience, but it doesn't change. And in fact, surround sound, why a lot of people have, how many of you have surround bars at home? A couple people, right? Who has full-on surround sound systems? Okay, the people who have surround sound systems, do you sit in the dead center of that surround sound system when you watch? No, right? Because if any more people than one watch a surround movie, everybody who's not in the middle is going to get slightly worse of an experience than the person who is dead in the middle. So, and it also depends on your room size, whether it's a square, whether it's a rectangle, all sorts of crazy stuff. So surround is very in particular like that. It has very specific needs, and again, it's only horizontal. The other thing is it does not transmit signals directly to speakers. So when you record something or you mix it down for surround sound, you have 5 channels of music, technically 6 channels of music, okay, or sound. You have the left channel and the right channel, so left and right, and then you would have center, And then you have left surround, which is behind you, and right surround, which is behind you. And then you have the 0.1, which is the sixth channel, which is called the LFE, or the low frequency emitter, or what we commonly call them subwoofers. Okay? By the way, subwoofers were never meant to have music in them. I know everybody who loves dubstep is now sad, but that's just the way it is. They were there so that you could feel punches, so that when something like this happened, like you would vibrate because it would emit such a low frequency that you would have physical reaction to the sounds. It was a point, that's why it was a 0.1. It was never considered to be an actual channel. And then of course, we decided to make it a channel. And now you have entire music genres who, if you don't have a subwoofer, you can actually hear what's going on. So it's kind of interesting. One of the big problems, so that's discrete. So everything you mix, you're going to put something over here, or you're going to put something over here, or you're going to put it over there. It's all going to come out of that speaker. Okay? With Ambisonics, there are 4 channels or more, and they don't come out of any particular speaker. They are a set of channels that are then put into a decoder, which would then convert it to whatever you wanted to listen to. And we'll see that in action in a minute. So it's different in the sense that it doesn't have a direct speaker correlation. It doesn't, you can't say, oh, that's my W speaker, and that's my Y speaker, and that's my X speaker. It's no, I'm going to play Ambisonics, and my decoder is going to decode it. And that brings into this issue. You have to have a decoder to use it, okay? Which makes it really tough to record, by the way, because unless you have a computer that is fast enough to run the decoder while you're recording without delay, then you end up like almost 10 to 15 milliseconds off of what you're recording. Now, sometimes when you're monitoring like ambient sounds, that's not a big deal, but if you're trying to run a multi-tracking session with music, that is a no-go. Like that, you can't have it. And so that becomes very difficult at this point, is the fact that we need a decoder, and it needs to be super efficient, which most of them aren't at the moment. Okay, there are 2 different kinds of formats. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I will answer them. 2 formats. The first one is called A format. An A format is the microphone that is recording your Ambisonics. It tends to have between 4 and 8 capsules, or 4 and 8 capturing devices. And in A format, you get a signal from every one of those capsules. Okay, that is let's call that the raw form of Ambisonics. Then you have B format, which is what we would decode when we wanted to do different kinds of stereo or different kinds of surround sound. And there's 2 kinds of B formats. There's FUMA and Ambix. All right, so see, we're getting complicated already. This is why you need to know this stuff. So FUMA and Ambix are sort of delivery formats. So depending on whom you're doing this work for, or what kind of video they're working with, or what kind of software they're with, they may ask you to deliver in different formats. So yes, Ambisonics can also just be a delivery format. So you could take a surround recording and then deliver it in Ambix to whoever you're working with. The issue would be is you would probably lose all of your height information. So it wouldn't be like true Ambisonics, but it is something that you could do. So with FUMA, which is sort of the classic way, this is the old way, there are 4 channels, W, X, Y, and Z. And W, the first channel, is 3 decibels lower than all the rest. And then you have Ambix, which is W, Y, Z, X, and they're all the same level. Okay? So if you're not sure what a decibel is how we measure volume differences, dynamic levels in audio, and they're usually related to some standard. So if you're in digital world, 0 dB or 0 decibels equals this is as much as you can put through the system before it distorts. Okay, so it's like a bucket. And as soon as you pour it all the way up to the top of the bucket, that's 0 and you can't do anything else. So in digital audio, everything is negative. and you want to stay below the 0 point, okay? In analog world, 0 was sort of the Goldilocks zone. It was developed so people could record to tape. And so it was loud enough to be louder than the hiss of the tape or the inherent noise of the tape, but not so loud that you would oversaturate the tape and distort. So it's like the Goldilocks zone. And that's where everybody would try to shoot to have most of their stuff. And so that's for a different lecture, but it's also very complicated going back and forth between digital and analog because of it. But what we want to know is that the classic way to do this, that first channel is softer than all the other ones by design, whereas the Ambix is all equal. Now, if I had my druthers, I would always use Ambix because it doesn't alter the audio in any way as far as level. I'd rather keep it the same, but it depends on who you're giving your audio to or what programs you're using. So that's sort of the background of Ambisonics. Are there any questions about that? You're all like looking at me like, oh my God, what did I just get myself into? Okay.
How much money did I just get myself into?
How much money did you get? Well, at least $3,000. That's could be a lot worse. So let's talk about recording Ambisonics, because this is what you guys, yes?
Is there a particular application difference between the formats?
No, actually there is not. It is all basically where you're sending it and what they're expecting. And at this point, I can't tell you who accepts what, because I've been asked for each one. And so most of the decoders and encoders that encode and decode back between the two will allow you to put it in any format you want. And I guess that'll continue until somebody decides to make a standard, which nobody has yet, because this is still new. Well, it's old, but it's new again. Yes?
Is there any meaning to those individual letters, or why they're in different orders between the two standards?
As far as I can tell, no. It's just a way of doing it. I asked the same question, why they put them in different orders, and I got I don't know, because they wanted to be different. I don't know. I'm sure there might be like some algorithmic differences, but I don't know what they are. Yes?
He was saying the second one, you rather have the second one personally because it doesn't have any distortion compared to the first one.
Doesn't alter the level, yes.
Why would someone want the level altered then?
Because they're using a program that that requires FUMA. There may be a video program that actually requires that particular codec to use it. Think about like, have you guys gone to the museum yet? Yeah, go to the museum and go to the console and PC part of the museum, and then go all the way to the Atari. And there in the Atari, there's actually a Cubase 2.0 on it from the 80s. And strangely enough, it's totally valid, and you could still make all of your music on that. And yet, obviously, it doesn't take Ambisonics. But that's sort of what I'm implying, is that there are programs like Pyramix and a bunch of other ones that have been around forever that just utilize that particular codec over Ambix. At some point, it's gonna settle out, and it's just gonna be, this is what we're doing. But it's kind of like, FLAC versus Apple lossless versus whatever. Everybody's sort of fighting for that standard, and no one's really come up with it yet. So, but it'll get there, I promise. So the first thing you need when you're recording Ambisonics is you need microphones, okay? And as I said before, you could use discrete microphones, and it could just be like surround sound, where you just put a bunch of mono microphones everywhere and then you place them in a virtual sound field when you mix. But what we're really looking at that's really hard. Well, it's not hard, but it's time consuming, and you have to put lots of microphones up, and it's got a lot of gear. We don't want to do that. We want to have something that's in a small, carryable format. And so the first one that we're going to talk about is called the tetrahedral microphone. Okay, tetrahedral microphone. This is what those pioneers placed their big microphones in. So they made it so the capsules at the top are in a tetrahedron. 4 sides, and they all point in different directions and slightly different angles. Okay? The reason I'm picking this is because this is by far the most popular portable sound field microphone that in existence. Okay? This type. Okay? This particular picture is of a Rode NT-SF1. I'm not here to promote anybody's stuff, but they have a $1,000 microphone that utilizes this. The reason why they got into it was because they bought a company called Soundfield, which still makes microphones. And Soundfield created one called the SPS 2000, and that's about $6,000, and it looks just like that. But it has purportedly better electronics in it, or better microphone, better capsules. They also make a bigger one, which has larger capsules instead of these. These are small capsules. And then Sennheiser makes one called the Ambio, and that one also looks just like this, but uses different capsules. The issue with using these microphones is that when you are mixing the audio, every one of those capsules has noise. And when we're like mixing an album or something, that noise doesn't get noticed because there's so many other things going on. But when we mix in Ambisonics, those capsules get added together. So if each one of those capsules has a self noise of negative 14 decibels, I think these are negative 12 decibels, when you add 4 of them together, it actually equals, let's see, 12 plus 12 is 15 plus 15, so it's negative 18 decibels, okay? And negative 18 decibels is not bad, but some of the older, like the Sennheiser Ambio, each one of those capsules is like negative 24 dB, which is much, much, much louder, right? It's over 5 times as loud. So when you add those together, you get a hiss, an audible hiss. So it's great for like ambience, but it might not be the greatest thing to record a concert with because you'd have that background hiss. So you have to be careful of that. But the Rode was the first one to sort of make an affordable version of these. Now, if no cost, like if you have no cost issue whatsoever, then you could go to Sennheiser's fancier one called the ORTF 3D. That, my friends, costs $19,000. And that one basically utilizes a much different pattern to do it. It's actually a modified surround microphone. But again, it's in a mostly small area. But this is the one that everybody is talking about now. Like if you want to get into Ambisonics, you're looking at a tetrahedral microphone. Now that's not the only thing you need. Okay, so microphone's one thing. The next thing, higher order. I forgot about this. So this microphone here is called a first order microphone. It gets you your horizontal really good, and it gets your up and down pretty good. If you added 4 more microphones to that, you'd end up with what's called a second order. And that gets you really good horizontal and really good vertical. And there's one company that makes it, and they're called Core Sound, and it's called, I don't know what it's called. Their tetrahedral one's called the Tetramic, but they have one more that has 8 microphone capsules. The problem with that is now you have 8 capsules you have to add together, so you have the better capability of making more noise. So it's a trade-off. Do you want really good 3D sound, or do you want okay 3D sound but really good audio? It's a trade-off, and at this point you're kind of stuck. You have to have that trade-off. Yes?
If you had one of the 8 capsule ones, would you be able to decide later, I'm only going to isolate 4 of the original capsules from the record? Nothing like that?
No, not at this point. I'm sure that's something that they'll think about, but not right now. I think it's called the Octamic. That's what I'm thinking. So, now you need a recorder. This is the part that everybody forgets about. The problem with Ambisonics is every channel, every microphone has, every capsule around there has to be captured at the exact same level, right? They said that you are allowed to have a 0.1 dB difference and it still be okay. But anything more than that. So that means everybody here with a Scarlett whatever Focusrite thing that you have the little knob on the front, you can't do this. You can't, because those analog knobs are not okay. You know, they're not accurate enough. So what people have been going to are, they've been going to portable recorders. Okay, everybody's heard of the Zoom recorders. I'm sure you've heard of your Tascam recorders. I personally use a Sound Devices recorder called a MixPre 6, and they have digitally the other Sound Devices. If you have seen them before, they have an 8-channel one called the 788T. Really, and they've got a 32-channel one. They're very, very expensive, but they have digitally controlled microphone preamplifiers, and you can actually link all of them together. So my MixPre 6 has 4 channels, I can plug all 4 channels of my microphone into that little box, and I link them together, and I turn one knob, and they're all turned at the exact same amount. And that allows me to make sure that every channel is exactly the same. Okay? The other thing that you have to do is you have to calibrate your microphone level, because you've got 4 microphones up here and you place it somewhere, something that's right in front of one microphone might be really loud, but not be so loud behind it, right, as you see the levels. And so we use what's called pink noise, which is equal energy per octave, and it sounds like this. Well, that's pink noise. This is white noise. Okay, so pink noise is used because it represents how we hear, and you can pump that into your recorder and turn the microphone knob until you get the desired headroom, so you won't clip, which is usually -12 to -18, depending on how loud your area is. But having the recorder is imperative. Now, I also put interface up here. If you happen to own an interface that has digitally controlled microphone preamps, such as Metric Halo Gear or any of the, not any, but like some of the more modern Pro Tools stuff, then you're okay. Even PreSonus to some extent, I think, has digitally controlled mixers. You can, like the one back there, I think that's a PreSonus. It might be a Behringer, I don't know. But, huh? Oh, geez, okay. Well, that has digitally controlled mic preamps, so you'd be able to use that also. But it's important that they are perfectly accurate. Perfect. They have to be perfect. So so not only do you need a mic, but you need that. The actual thing that I will show you in a minute was recorded with analog mic pre's that were supposed to be 0.1 dB apart. I don't know how well it worked. Probably not great. I didn't have my recorder with me. Now, there's a third thing you need. Digital audio workstation. Unfortunately, as far as I know, there are only 2 that work with Ambisonics, because you need a digital audio workstation that allows you to have a multi-channel track. Because all of these channels, all 4 of those channels have to play at the same time, and they have to be fed to the decoder, and the decoder can only be on one track. I mean, it could be on multiple tracks, but you have to have one decoder to do all 4. And so there's only 2 DAWs to my knowledge at this point that have that capability, and that is Pro Tools HD and Reaper. Okay, I'm going to show you Reaper because it's free. Well, it's not free, it's $60, but if you don't want to pay for it, you don't have to. But Pro Tools HD is like $2,000-ish, $2,500, depending if you're a student. If you're a student, it's like $1,800. But Pro Tools HD has the ability to have multi-channel tracks. I'm sure Logic at some point will have it. You can have surround channels in Logic, but for some reason they don't work for just a random 4 channels. Like, you need to have something where you can say, I'm putting 4 channels into this. One of the other things I should say about the recorders, what's nice about having the recorders as opposed to the just recording into your computer, is that a recorder will record what is called a poly wave file. So it's a wave file. Do we all know what a wave file is? Yeah? So it's where we hear our music from, right? Well, a wave file, if it's mono, would only have one channel, right? But we mostly listen to things in stereo, which have two channels. So that's one file that has a left channel and a right channel. Well, you can actually, with that wave file, have 32 channels. You could have 64 channels, all in this one file if you want. And you need to have a recorder that will be able to record into that. Otherwise, it can get really, really tricky to get it. And I'll show you a way to get it, by the way. But having the recorder that records directly into it is so much easier than trying to hack it the other way. But you need a DAW that will have, that is multi-channel track capable. And right now, that's Reaper and Pro Tools HD. And then, of course, you need your encoder and your decoder, which is great. Most of the time, if you buy a microphone, it comes with a plugin. So the Rode microphone comes with the Soundfield plugin, which is what you'll see. There's also external ones. I know that Waves makes a Waves 360 audio plugin, which is also an encoder decoder. I've seen them on Plugin Alliance. They've got a bunch. I think Sennheiser has one. There's a lot of different ones that you can get. And the more expensive the plugin in general, the more stuff you can do with it and the more high quality it is.
What was the Waves one called?
It's called 360 Audio or Audio 360, something like that. And then finally, you need monitors. Monitors for your ears, okay? Unfortunately, as I said before, most of you guys will not have the Atmos cage. Like, you will not have 40 speakers hanging above your head and around you, and you're in like this Faraday cage of speakers, which is really interesting to look at. Like, if you ever go to the AES convention, they have a booth for it, and it's like this weird, it's like this half dome that they like lower over your head, and then you can mix in it. I mean, if you have that, cool, but most of us don't. So we use these, okay? Headphones, you can translate your audio using headphones. You could use one that is capable of Ambisonics, where you can hear the height information. These can't. They're just normal headphones. These are Audis, LCDXs, but these will help you monitor what you're doing and work with them. Headphones are usually what we use. The reason that's different is because most of the people that you'll listen to when it comes to recording and mixing music say you're not allowed to use headphones to mix music. That's not true, but the concept is you need headphones to mix this unless you have that cage of speakers, right? So that's important. So you're probably going to be using headphones. Now, let's actually look at some of this now that you've listened to all. Any questions of what I've talked about so far? Yes?
Does it matter if you have to have like 7.1 headphones or whatever? Or
No, these are just regular headphones. So you'd be monitoring, if you just use regular headphones, you're going to be monitoring in what is called binaural. Binaural, if anybody is interested, I'm sure you can go on YouTube and you can get all sorts of creepy things to listen to. Basically, binaural is, it's a recording format that was created in the 70s where they actually took a head, right? So, well, not a real head, a mannequin head, and they put microphones in its ears, and then they would put that in front of orchestras or whatever, and it would sound like you were there because it was literally mimicking your head and ears. And that was called binaural. And there are actually some recordings. I think the Kronos Quartet, String Quartet did one. Oh, and yes. And there's another one. This is a modern band. Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam did it. It's not modern, but was modern. A Pearl Jam, they did an album all in binaural. And that's It's interesting. You should listen to it. It's very, because you put, it don't, but binaural only really work. I mean, it works in regular speakers and it sounds fine. But when you put headphones on, all of a sudden you get this total immersive experience, which is a lot what Ambisonics does. So when you monitor Ambisonics in headphones, you're basically getting a binaural experience. Okay? And when you go on YouTube and listen to binaural stuff, it can get really creepy. Like they'll do stuff like cutting your hair, and you'll hear the person using scissors as it cuts around you, and you will actually hear it go around your head. And some people can actually feel it, even though it's not really there. So it can get pretty creepy pretty quick, but that's what you would be monitoring in, would be binaural. All right, so let's look at some of this stuff. Yeah, let's look at this first. All right, let me... All right, here we go. All right, so we are in Reaper. All right, this is Reaper. It looks like any other DAW. I used to do a thing on Reaper, but we didn't do it this year. Reaper's awesome. Use Reaper. A lot of video game companies now use Reaper, so use Reaper. What's cool about Reaper is this. Okay, let me explain this session. So I did a session a couple days ago with a group called the Hex Girlfriends. Okay, that are on my label. Listen to their music, and we recorded an entire EP, and one of the tunes is called 19. And at the end of the day, we were like, okay, this is a really cool tune. Why don't we try to do an acoustic version of it? And so what we have is we have a piano, and we have the two lead singers, Hannah and Sandra, and they're playing, and they're sitting right next to each other at the piano. And I thought this would be a really cool time to put up the Ambisonic microphone to see what we got. Okay, and so what we see up here is you see the Ambisonic bed, which is up here, and look, it's a track that has 4 signals in it. This is the A format signals, A, B, C, and D, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is what came directly out of that microphone. Now what's neat about Reaper is I can actually take these 4 because these were recorded in Pro Tools because we didn't have Reaper at the studio I was working in, and I couldn't make a poly file out of it, or I didn't have the poly file like I told you needed. But what you can do is you can actually use another track in Reaper. It's called a folder track. See if I can do this. See how they go away. And that's because these things are in this track. And what I have is let's actually show you the routing here. I know this looks super complicated, but it's not, and lots of tutorials on the internet. If you want to contact me, I'll tell you all of this stuff. But what we have is this track is receiving all of those other tracks, and you see how we have channel 1 going to channel 1, channel 2, or the second track going to channel 2, third track going to channel 3, fourth track going to channel 4, and this track has 4 channels. Okay? 4 track channels. Notice how in Reaper, we can have 64 channels if we want. Don't ask me why you'd want that, but I'm sure there's a reason. Okay? And so basically what I've done is I've created one track that controls all of this, but is being fed by 4 others, the A format. And what that allows me to do is, you'll see here, is that this is the sound field plugin. Notice how we have a head and we have all of this stuff. So you're not going to get like a super good audio experience with this because we're in mono here, so you won't be able to hear the difference a lot, but maybe a little. But I'll just show you what it does, okay? So this is the Ambisonic bed. So this is the Ambisonic microphone, and because I'm a big believer in CYA, I then have a lead Vox mic, a background vocal, and a piano mics. So just in case if this didn't work, I didn't just screw an entire session. And then I have some other effects that we're just going to mute because I went down a rabbit hole this morning when I was doing this, and I just mixed it. I probably shouldn't have, but it's okay. So let's first look at the Ambisonic. Well, actually, let's listen to the tune first. I don't know where she starts. She makes a mistake in here. It's not edited. Don't tell her I showed you this. They'd be pretty mad. Uh-oh, we can't hear it. Hold on. Could you unmute the channel? Are there any channels muted over there? No? Just unmute them until we get sound.
All right, let me try to.
There it is. We have sound now.
You're so quiet and mean. Kinda miss when.
So this is just the spot mics, which would be your typical acoustic
When
track.
I was weak,
Okay.
you loved me when I was still asleep, and when you'd cry, I'd make it right. Oh, when I was 19,
This is a good song.
thought any day now the world would be ending, and it was just you and me. Didn't think that my life could mean anything at all. So when you tried, I'd let it slide. Oh, do what you want, take what you need. You know I am quiet, won't make a scene. I'd do anything to keep this peace, but the people I please don't care about me. You're so quiet and mean. Oh, I kinda miss when I didn't know anything back then. I was so naive. Oh, you tried to love me, but I was trying to sleep. Oh, and then you'd cry. Oh, and then I have a dream that when I die, I die fighting. Oh, I have a dream that when I die, I die fighting. Oh.
So there you go. If you guys went to the modal lecture in video games, that last part changed modes. Okay, so now we have the ambisonic aspect of this. So let's look at this here. All right. So this is the sound field plugin. This is the decoder. Okay? In fact, hold on. If I do this, we can be more focused. Okay? Well, it's not super bright, but you'll see up here, the first thing is input, and this is telling me what kind of sounds am I feeding this, okay? And so right now it's marked at NTSF1. This is the Rode plugin with that Rode microphone, but basically what that means is this is the A format. So if you have any A format stuff, you can plug it into this plugin. By the way, this plugin's free, okay? Notice underneath, though, you also have B format. So if you've been given fully mixed, already B format stuff, you can then put it through this decoder, and it'll allow you to manipulate it further. Okay, so most of the recorders have the ability to both have the A format and the two B formats. Notice how they're both included. You have FUMA and Ambix. So it just is what it is, okay? So we're gonna keep it on NTSF1. You have the overall trim, which means we could lower the level of all of those capsules if it was too loud. And then it gives you your microphone positioning. So if you have a tetrahedral microphone, you have to remember, take a picture with your cell phone, guys, because that's which way it was pointed, okay? So if it was pointed up and down, cool, or did you do it front fire, or did you point it upside down, right? Because you could hang it any way you wanted, but the plugins change settings depending on what direction it's in. So think about it. You could use this creatively. Like you could have it up and down, but you really like the way it sounds this way. I don't know, but that's something that you have control of. And I always start out, obviously, with the way I had it set up to begin with. And it was up and down like this. Over here, we have our output. Notice how I have stereo, or it's stereo, but look at all the difference. We could output to B format. So if all you wanted to do was convert your mix to B format, you could go right ahead. Hey, if you wanted to go to mono, you could do that too. Stereo, which means binaural in this sense. So this would be binaural audio. You 5.1, 7.1, 5.1.2, 7.1.2, 5.1.4, and 7.1.4, okay? All of these can be derived from the Ambisonics signal. That's what makes Ambisonics so special, is that they're very future-proof. You've actually created something that can be later on down the line turned into something else. So it's a lot like DSD. Does anybody know what DSD is? Okay, DSD is called Direct Stream Digital. It was back when everybody wanted high quality audio. I know we all don't care about high quality audio anymore, but you guys probably do, but no one else does. Think about it. We all get angry when Netflix's 4K goes down, but they're only sending you 48 kilohertz audio, and it's not even high quality. It's like a lower quality audio, but everybody loves high quality video. I don't get it. But anyway, Direct Stream Digital was a way people would archive analog stuff, because instead of sampling at 48 kilohertz, it sampled at 5.2 gigahertz. So it was super high resolution audio. But again, you needed a decoder in order to listen to it. And so this is kind of like that. It's this high quality format that you can derive a bunch of other stuff from. So it makes it a little bit future-proof. So once we have that, we now have the ability to control how the microphone or how our stereo image works. So I'm just going to play the beginning of this. Oh, hold on. Say she messed up. It's fine. Okay, so this is as if you were facing the microphone. This is you. You are the microphone. Notice how you can't hear it, but let me just show you. You can see it. Piano is over here. They're over here. You can see in the spectrum because the piano is the loudest thing. Also, you'll notice that my microphone was much higher than the piano because the piano is down here. So the way I had it was I had the piano, so the piano had its lid up like this, and I had the ambisonic microphone up here because I wanted a really good piano sound. And it was like this, and so that's why when you look at it, the piano down here, because that's where it was.
How many singers are there?
2.
And where are they located?
They are playing the piano. Well, one is playing and the other one's sitting right next to her. So if this is the piano, they're over here. And again, you're in mono, so you can't hear it, but what you would see is, and the piano is much louder because they played it very loud. You'll see a bunch of it over here, but when they start singing louder, you're going to start seeing it over here. So let me go to a place where it's a little louder. Let's go there. So now you can start to see things over here. But over here, still that piano. Yes. We are in a 4,000 square foot studio. So they were in a corner, 4,000 square feet. So you're going to start seeing back here some of the room reflections. But that's very important. Back here, you're going to see the reflection. But you know, if we want, like, I didn't know how I was going to use this. How am I going to use this in music, right? This is a good thing to think about. Well, I thought, well, when you record stuff like drums, people put up room microphones for drums, right? Because they want more thickness or more loudness from their drums, okay? And so what they do is they take that room sound and they blend it in. And it thickens the drums because all of that reverberation from the drums, all the tone from the drums is out in front of the kit. It's not close up to it, right? It's out front. And so if you take that and blend it in, you can make your drums thicker and heavier, okay? Especially if you play tricks with compression and things like that. But you can do the same thing here. Like, okay, maybe this microphone was too close. Now it's not too close. Because now the microphone is facing the other way, right? So now it's like you went like this and you turned around, and this is what it would sound like with you facing the other direction. So now you are listening to the reflections. So now we have now created our own room ambience just by turning that around. If I didn't like the way it was centered, again, you guys can't hear it because it's in mono, but I could point my microphone towards the vocalists, or I could point it. So now you hear more piano. Now you hear more vocal. If you want, that's what it sounds, that's the height information. This is what it sounds like below. Okay, and so by using the way we can play with this ambisonic microphone, we can change in post-production instead of having to do it then. Okay, now this is a sort of a sticking point. Make sure I'm okay. Yeah, as an engineer, I was always taught you got it right in the studio. That's what you did. You have to have that sort of knowledge of what you want and you get it done, right? And that's what I teach all of my students. But I do understand that, like, if you're recording a live orchestra, or if you're recording, like, this was one take. I mean, that's all this was straight through, one take. When you're recording that and you're capturing something like that, which is not overdubbed, it's all together, you want that energy, you want that emotion, well, you don't want to make a mistake, right? You don't want to go, wow, I really wish I had done something else. And in music, having this ambisonic microphone allows me to play with this later. Some of the other things that you can do, again, you won't be able to hear it, but I can actually change this. So what I've actually made this is wider. I've made the stereo sound wider. Yes?
So is there a way to apply this to digital sound?
Mm-hmm. You mean like MIDI, right?
Yeah, sure. But generated not through an analog recording.
Yes. So what you would do with this is you could, if you wanted, take the synthesizer, right? And all of your material, and you have 4 channels of it, you could feed that 4 channels into one of the larger channels here, right? Feed 4 of them in, so you got 4 tracks, that becomes your A, B, C, and D. And then you throw it into one of these ambisonic plugins, and you'd be able to manipulate it in that way.
You would do it just as 4 straight identical copies and then place them, or?
Right, basically, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So can you just like take, if I have a mono synth and I record it, and then I have a drum kit, and then I have something else, all separate recordings, can I just use one of these types of plugins to place those instruments in 3D space and then generate this file from there?
Yep. Indeed. So yes, you can very well do this. Yes?
As far as you know, there's really not any sort of plugins that are compatible
I wouldn't see why not. Yeah, you could. This is a VST, so does Ableton not run VSTs? Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, well, okay. Yes. Because Ableton doesn't have the ability to use multiple channels. Sorry, multiple tracked channels. Right, but what you would need is you need to have the 4 channels feeding one channel that has this plugin on it. See, you have all of these here. Like without that, you can't derive the Ambisonics. Yes.
Out of curiosity, as a video editor, is there a plug-in version or something equivalent to this for like Final Cut, Premiere Pro, or anything like that?
From what I have found, what people do is they take, they have their audio mixed in Pro Tools, and then it's exported as a 5.1 or 7.1, and it's sent to the video editors. I'm sure there will be something at some point about it. Now, they do make plugins that sort of fake this, where they allow you to send a bunch of channels to it, and then you can mix in 360, and then it outputs outputs a somewhat ambisonic recording. But this is sort of the direct way of what it was doing. Yes?
And so this software is generally for single position 360 degrees. Is there anything that'll let you do 3D placement and 360 degrees?
Well, yeah, remember, do you mean like distance?
So I mean, like, if right now I'm the listening position and I've got that there, if I'm virtualizing something with different instruments, I assume it would be more for a virtual reality application. If I take 6 steps forward.
Right, okay, I know what you're talking about. So what he's saying is that right now the microphone is stationary. The person listening to it is stationary, which is typical music, right? We don't tend to move around. But if you wanted that concept of moving it around, I believe that would be part of the middleware. That would be where you actually apply the head tracking to the different elements. So you'd be able to feed the middleware program your ambisonic information, and it would be able to derive what you were looking at and which way you were tracking your head. And so that would be where you would get all of that. Okay, so one other thing before you guys ask a lot more questions is you can also change the polar pattern. So right now it's in supercardioid, but I can go in and I can change them to cardioid, or I could make them omnis. I don't know why you do that, but you could. You could also make them figure eights. So you can actually change what you want, which allows you to change a lot of different stereo formats, the way you've captured it. You can do lots of different things with this. Other more complicated plugins, I think there's one by Hoffa that allow you to change each individual microphone. Like in fact, because see how this says left, right? But like if you were to put it in to 5.1, Hoffa would allow you to change the left and the right separately. This one does not. Even if I unlink it, it's still left and right. But there are other more complicated programs or plugins that allow you to adjust each one. Like this one would allow me to put things in different areas and change which direction I'm in, those kind of things. So that's the power of just something as simple as this tetrahedral microphone. It allows you as a musician to capture ambience and use it in your musical recordings. Okay, you can also, if you've decided that you want to make your music into something that's 360, then you can use these concepts to create an ambisonic mix, which you then would convert to your Fuma or Ambix and have it sent to, Facebook 360 or, whatever. I don't know what YouTube's is, but I'm sure YouTube has a VR plugin or whatever, and it would be able to decode it for you. So that's what we see. I mean, this is what Ambisonics is. It's more about flexibility and just being able to be super creative with what you're doing. Music is always a little different. Like, I was never a big fan of the surround sound music. You know, it's like, it was kind of cool if you were listening to a symphony because then it felt like you were there, but like, do I really want to listen to Sting's music and have, things whizzle around my head? I don't know. It's cool in the beginning, but not great. But I do find this to be super interesting. What I'm using this for is I have one of these microphones up during the entire session. So I'll put up one of these microphones in the middle of the room for the whole session, okay? And I'll record 10 hours, however long the session is. And then when I go back, right, because we have such a, for those of you who saw my panel yesterday, we have a hard time selling music. Right? Music is hard to sell, especially CDs in physical form. But what we've been doing is we've been creating hidden tracks on CDs that's of the conversations in the room, and they're in binaural 360. So if you then listen to the CD and you listen to it straight through, you then get snippets of what the band was doing in the room, in between takes, and what they were talking about, and it actually feels like you're in the room with the band. Because if you've got headphones on, it's like all of a sudden you've been transported from the music straight into the room with the band. And it's just another thing that we're trying to do as labels and producers to get people to, want to buy music and buy physical copies of music. Because this is not something that Spotify could, you can't send Spotify 360 audio and have it work. Because they don't care about that at the moment. But you could also use it for YouTube and videos like that. Any questions? No, you guys are like, nope, you were great. Yes?
Does this have any implications to like how you design a sound studio? So let's say you have limited space, or maybe not a non-ideal space. And does this open up the possibility to correct for bad room?
No. No, this would make the bad room worse. You're thinking about something like this. I know that looked a lot like, here, I'll just put it here because I don't care. So you're looking at something like this, this is what's called a crossfeed amplifier. This is Goodhertz's can opener. Basically they allow you to take your headphones and turn them into virtual speakers. Waves has a plugin called NX, Waves NX, and you can actually put a little head tracker on there so that when you move your head around, you're like, whoa, things are changing. And again, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can. It's cool. It's one of those things. That helps correct for rooms because you can mix on headphones that you know very well, and you can get some of the spatialness of a two-dimensional mix through one of these crossfeed amplifiers. But I would think this in particular would make a bad room worse because in order to do it, you'd have to have more speakers. However, if you didn't want to use the speaker route, then it would make your room better because you can only use headphones to hear it. So that's one of those things. Anything else? Although maybe, if I think about it, if it converted it into Ambisonics and then, I don't know, that whole room correction thing that's a lot of voodoo. I don't know about that. Yeah. Yes?
Have you done any Foley or sound effects recording with the Ambisonic mic?
No, just ambience. We did a couple other things that came with, on one of their other tunes, I went and recorded rain and a bunch of other things like that. That's all I've done so far. But yes, you could do it very easily. Although Foley is more, I'm trying to think of whether, like Foley, all the Foley I've ever done is usually with mono microphones because you want to be able to control its movement later. Like if you want it to move through the 360 space, because if you have like Reaper, once you have a bunch of takes, a bunch of tracks, you can then create a 360 panner, which has up and down, left and right and around and all of this, and then you can start mixing your mono microphones in with this Ambisonic to create it. That's what everybody was sort of talking about, and then have it fed into this Fuma or Ambix. And the better plugins allow you to use more channels. Remember we talked about higher order, right? So if you had a better plugin, this one only does 4, but a more expensive plugin might do second order, which is 8 channels, third order is 16 channels, and that way you could get more and more accurate, and instead of using a mic that did it, you could have one order mic, and then you could have a bunch of mono mics everywhere that you've then mixed into a higher order Ambix. Any other questions? Yes?
You wanted to create, I'm just going to call it artificial Ambisonics. Like, what are any considerations on how you will bring it to make a more full field of sound?
Phase. So phase is a really big thing when you want to add microphones. It's something I didn't talk about right away. Sorry, I'm going to run a minute over here. And that is when you use extra microphones, okay? So you have your Ambisonic mic and you use extra microphones, you have to have a slate. You have to go in front of the sound field microphone so that all your mics pick that up. And so with synthesized music, you just want to make sure that everything is starting at the same time. Does that make sense? Like you don't have to have sound, but everything has to be going and is synced up, because at some point, if you have things that are interacting that are out of phase, it won't work well. That's more of a thing that involves with spot mics. Like I had to move these spot mics by samples, like 140 samples this way and 140 samples this way, to make sure that they were in line with the sound field microphone. Otherwise, it got really weird. So you do have to be careful of phase. That's about it. Anything else? Yes?
Any suggestions on how to reduce phase in Ambisonics?
Being careful, measure your microphones. If you're using microphones, you can use waveform visualization. You can zoom in really far if you have 2 things happening at the same time and make sure they're happening dead on at the same time. For synthesized music, it won't be that much of a difference because you're probably not creating stereo elements. But I mean, you are, but it's not like when you're recording live where you have a spot mic picking up the same thing that the sound field microphone's picking up, and that phase interaction is what's the issue, is the spot mic to the sound field mic. But I would still just be careful of phase. And one of the best ways to check phase is always to actually think of things in mono. So listen in mono, have your Ambisonics being ported to mono, and that way you can actually hear the phase interactions between the microphones, right? Because it'll sound weird if it's not right. Like the biggest thing is like when people record snare drums, they'll put a mic on the top and the mic on the bottom, and they don't realize, or even a kick drum, they'll put a mic in the kick drum and one outside. If they're not phase coherent, your kick drum disappears. Like people listen, where'd the kick drum? And they keep pushing it up, and it gets worse and worse as they push it up because they're making the phase difference worse and worse. Instead of going, oh, let's put it in phase, and then your kick drum sounds like it's going to break walls. And so it's just lining things up. And you can do it visually if you want. We used to just have to guess and use milliseconds and things like that, but now you can actually see the waveform and you can line them up. All right, everyone, I think I have to go. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Come to my other panels. There's one tonight at 8:30, and then tomorrow from 11:30 to 2:30.